of incidents. And we're going to call on Engineer Dr. Mashid Afar to do justice to this presentation. Please let's jam our hands as we welcome our resource person, Engineer Dr. Mashid Afar.
Good afternoon, all directors here present, and dear participants. My name is Engineer Dr. Meshak I. Alpha, and I'm privileged this afternoon to represent Engineer Dr. Musa Nimrod, Project Director, MV Plan International Limited, who has given me this privilege to represent him to make this presentation. And I also want to appreciate the organizers of this workshop for this privilege, which for me is more like a homecoming, because as a young student on industrial training about 19 years ago, I was at the Department of Dams and Reservoir Operations, and I was so excited that I saw the man I worked directly with at that time, Engineer Lawal, the retired Director of Dams and Reservoir Operation. So I'm happy to be here to make this presentation this afternoon. So the presentation is on dam inspection and reporting of incidents, which has come up in various presentations that we've had to listen to in the course of this workshop. So we are here to share just from our experience working on this aspect, especially for the transforming irrigation management in Nigeria. And this is an overview of my presentation. It's going to be an abridged version since we're running against time to be able to finish in good time. Of course, one of the statements on the ICOLD website is that the structure must be continually supervised and inspected throughout the whole life of the dam. So having done design and implemented the design, it doesn't bring the matter of the dam to an end. There must be a system of continuous monitoring, continuous supervision to ensure that the dam is in the right state to be able to achieve the purpose for which that dam was implemented. And we carry out this to confirm whether it is performing optimally, whether there are defects, whether there are hazards, which we were told yesterday is potential to cause harm in the dam structure, among others. Now, dam safety inspection program covers all types of dam, whether embankment dams, concrete dams, composite dams, and there can be comprehensive inspections, which involves multidisciplinary teams. It can be a scheduled inspection using different methods, and it can be an emergency action that can be taken as the need may arise. So how do we prepare for an inspection? The first step preparing for an inspection, whether it is a comprehensive inspection, whether it is an emergency inspection, whatever the inspection is, the first thing to do is to set up a team. And the team, as much as possible, is expected to be multidisciplinary in nature. We expect to have a geotechnical engineer there, hydrologists, structures, hydraulics, and geologists, and several other experts that make the team, because every component of the team, the expertise should be represented in doing an inspection for a dam. And then the next step is to review documents, the design drawings, and other design files, the operation logs of the dam, because the dam is expected to have an operation log that gives an overview of how it has fared over time, and then the instrumentation, which we talked about extensively, I think, yesterday or so. And then once you've formed the team and then you have all of these documents, you should be able to assemble all the tools that you will require, whether for visual inspection or some technical aspects of the inspection, like some investigations that may be carried out. And once that is done, you schedule a visit. And when the visit is scheduled, we should pay attention to how accessible various components of the dam may be, and the complexity of the terrain is also very important, because these are some of the things that may limit some level of extensive inspection of a dam. And as we do that also, we must be able to pay attention to all safety protocols as recommended by various standards. Now, I'm taking us, this is an embankment dam, and some of the write-ups may not be very clear, mentioning the various parts of the dam, including the spillway, the dam crest, the downstream and the upstream part of the dam. And all of these are required to be inspected in the process of dam inspection. So if I go a little more details, in an embankment dam, there are typical features that should be inspected, and these features are common to all embankment dams, as in the picture that I showed earlier. The dam features and descriptions are referenced looking downward direction. All right, when we mention the various parts of the dam, for those of us who are dam experts, we know the convention for identifying the various components of the dam. Some of these parts of the dam can be within areas of visible inspection. You can see them directly, but there are other aspects of the dam that may be covered by either the impounded water or by several other things that may not be visibly seen from the surface. But all of these, whether the ones that are exposed or the ones that are not exposed, require to be inspected, because they all form part of the component and contribute to the operation and the efficiency of the dam. In an embankment dam, we look at the crest, we look at the slopes, we look at the groins, the toe, the abutments, the spillways. We watch out for cracks, for slides, for depressions, for erosion, for seepage. We're looking out for vegetative growth, their quantity and their sizes, and then we look out for burrowing of animals that may pose risk. We look out for missing slope protection, such as riprap, that can accelerate erosion. We're also interested in checking whether there is emergency mitigation provision, or whether there is a need to make the provision in the course of the inspection. Now, inspecting embankment dams can help. It is helpful to prepare an inspection route. Where do you want to go? How do you access the various parts of the dam in advance to ensure that every part of the dam will be visited? So it's not when we get to the site of the dam that we're wondering how we're going to access it. There should be some preliminary information that should help us plan our route. And in some cases where you see that there are difficulties, you find out how you can leverage on technology to be able to access those places, as we mention as we go on. Then the inspector can take many different approaches to examining a dam, and can select method which should be systematic to ensure that all features are covered. So what we're saying in essence is that every part of the dam requires to be inspected, depending on the magnitude of that inspection that is expected to be done. All right? So the dam crest, of course, from that diagram that I showed, the dam crest, we can inspect it visually. You can walk on the dam crest, all right, from abutment to abutment, observing both upstream and downstream slopes while inspecting the crest surface. And then the upstream and the downstream slopes are also required to be inspected, walking across the slopes in a parallel or zigzag pattern along the embankment from abutment to abutment, starting with the upstream slope, and while we pay special attention to the downstream slope below the elevation of the reservoir. And then the upstream and downstream slope, okay, yes, is repeated. The embankment abutment contacts, we can walk through the embankment abutment contacts, that's the groin on both abutments, on both sides of the dam, or both the upstream and the upstream embankment, which we can do in conjunction with the slope inspection. We're also checking whether the design slope is appropriate or is still being maintained. The principal spillway or the primary spillway, we observe all accessible features of the primary spillway and its outlets. We inspect the inlet while performing the upstream slope inspection. So we do that simultaneously, and then the outlet during or after the downstream slope inspection is completed. Then we also inspect the auxiliary spillway, all right, by walking through the entire length and then to see whether it is still in good condition. We inspect the abutment, the outlet walks, downstream channels, and then the general areas of the dam are also inspected. And some of these may require some form of, beyond just the physical observation, they may require some form of technical investigation to confirm certain other things. All right, so I was talking about the routes, typical embankment dam features requiring visual inspection. You can see something like an erosion down there and several others. So some of this, you don't need to do any form of test to know whether there is a crack, all right, on the dam. These are things that can be seen, and some of them have been labeled here that are required for visual inspection. All right, some of the more common conditions that may be encountered during visual inspection of an embankment dam may be the longitudinal and transverse cracking. I will show you a picture later. Desiccation, cracking, depression, settlement, slide, seepage, lack of protection from wave action, that's the riprap I talked about, erosion, inappropriate vegetation, tree roots penetration, poor maintenance, ponding of water, animal burrows. These are things that can be visually inspected. You can see them without much effort or using any technological aid as much as possible. Many of these concerns are interrelated and they occur in conjunction or because of each other. So some of these issues can be related. One may be the resultant effect of the occurrence of another. But at this point, we're just identifying them, and then we can identify what the cause may be much later. We can also, the maximum loads, we can visualize the worst case conditions, the design storm, whether it is occurring or not, when looking for potential problems. This one may require some level of hydrological reanalysis because there are design flaws that were used to design the dam. You can carry out the analysis again to see whether that design flaw is still appropriate at the time, or there may be need to revisit those design assumptions. And then the dam cross provides the primary access for visual inspection and is where embankment problems are generally most notable. I think I've talked about this as I'm running. So these are some of the sketches of some of the things that can be visually inspected. You can see the longitudinal cracking on the dam crest there. You can see the second one, the vertical displacement that is going on as if the crest is tearing apart. We can see this one that is transverse, cutting across the dam crest there. We can see the depression, the low area on the dam crest, the depression on the dam crest there. So these are things that can be seen. There are detailed explanations that when we get the slide, we can look at that. But I'm just showing what we can see. You can see vegetation on the dam crest, and these are mostly common when the dam crest, you know, there are some of our dams that have some access roads on them, and if those roads are constantly being used, the chances of vegetation coming up on the dam crest may not easily happen because of the traffic that happens on the road. But we have some situations and some dams that you find vegetation growing not just on the slope, but on the crest itself, which is not acceptable because we know what the roots of trees can do to an embankment dam. And then you can see the sinkhole on the crest there. You can see the gully that is originating at the crest downstream of that dam. All right, now the gully may be as a result of several factors, but at this point we're just looking at what we can see. It may be as a result of excessive seepage through the embankment itself. It can lead to that erosion downstream and all of that. Then we see the rodent activity. Probably rats or some reptiles have dug some holes on the dam. Is also not accepted. But during inspection, all these are supposed to be noted. And then we have desiccation cracks on the dam, and we can see the sinkhole on embankment slope also there. And then we see the slump. I think this is upstream of the dam, the slump there. So these are things that can be, look at, there's a camber on the dam crest itself there. And these are things that can be observed by physical inspection. All right, so these are other ones that we can see during virtual inspections. Okay, just let me run. So we can see them. So I've talked about the embankment dam. The next is the concrete or masonry dam. We usually inspect gravity, arc, buttress, reinforced concrete, and masonry dams also, looking for structural cracks, looking for joint leakages, looking for foundation erosion. All right, since it's made of concrete, we are seeing whether there is undermining of the foundation and all of that. We are looking at deterioration from weathering, from chemical attack, from freeze thaw. We are looking at internal drainage systems and to ensure that they are functional. And because when I was talking earlier that when we plan for inspection, you should be able to plan your routes ahead of time. And we realized that, especially in Nigeria, some of our dams are in places that you may not be able to access every part of the dam. As a result of that, technology has helped us. We can use drones. Like some of the case studies I'm going to mention, we had to fly some drones to be able to get some real-time aerial photographs to help us do some inspection. We did that in Doma Dam, we did that in Kiri Dam, we did that in Dadinkowa as well, because there are some places we needed to fly drones to be able to get some information for aspects of the dam that may not be accessible at the time of the inspection. So we can use binoculars, we can use video when accessing restricted areas, just like I mentioned. All right? We also need to inspect the spillway outlets and the mechanical equipment, all the components, the inlets, the control, the outlet, the terminal. We identify damages to these structures and their appurtenances. We check for leakages, for scouring, for joint separation. We test the gates to see whether they are functional. All right? For example, when we walked in Dadinkowa Dam, we noticed that only one of, we noticed that the gates have not been operated for a very long time. And in case of emergency, if you have not operated the gate for a long time, it's not in the time of emergency you want to test it. The gate can refuse to work. So some of these things are to be checked during inspection to see their state and then to know whether there are remedial works that need to be done. It's not just when we have an emergency. Of course, we talked about the emergency inspection, but inspection is not something that should be done only at emergency, because sometimes when you do the inspections at emergency, you may not be able to prevent the consequent hazard if it is not in the state that is supposed to be. All right? For general areas, we check access roads, we check downstream channels, we check the reservoir itself, we inspect shoreline erosion, we look out for illegal encroachments. You know, because around the reservoir are always very fertile because of the floodplain, you see that beginning from farming activities, people encroach into the place. And in recent time, just like it was mentioned about the Lower Osuma Dam, you see that even residential buildings begin to encroach into areas they are not supposed to encroach into. So we check all of that. We evaluate the watershed condition. We check for sedimentation. All right, we check for sedimentation. For example, I think somebody mentioned yesterday, like Yakubu Gowon Dam in Jos and the Lantan Dam have experienced serious sedimentation. And I think under Akresal, there is an effort now to see how they can introduce some check dams to see some sediment traps within the catchment area so that it can reduce how much of the sediment that ends up in the reservoir. So during inspection, all of these are supposed to be checked also. We check for documents. We document the condition of bridges, we look at the retaining walls and the slope, and then just like I said, we can use aerial photos to detect long-term changes. We can do change detection using satellite imageries to see how much it has changed over time, especially the entire watershed of the dam, and then to see how this can impact on the operation of the dam going forward. All right, like I mentioned earlier, there are places that may not be accessible, where we can use unmanned area vehicles like the drone that we said we flew for some of the works that we did. And then we can also use some remotely operated vehicles, because if you are trying to check the bed of the reservoir, is covered with water. So you need a system that can go underwater and be able to give you information of that. We use bathymetric survey for some of this, which we did in the Dadinkowa, we did in Doma, and then we did in Kiri Dam as well, using some of these remotely operated vehicles to check this. And then once we do the inspection, whatever you have found in the inspection may not be useful until it's documented in a form that can be comprehended by both technical and non-technical audience, because the people making the policy should be able to understand what you have done, and then so that they can take action on what is expected to be done. So in collecting the data, we can use some of these tools that I mentioned, and the findings from using these tools are expected to be documented in a report that are comprehensive. And then we're expected to prepare structured reports, just like I mentioned, and that report, amongst others, should have a summary of findings, should have conclusions drawn, it should have the recommendations that are made based on the findings that were made from the field. It should include condition ratings, repair needs, and EAP review. And in some cases, we may need to, from the inspection, prepare documents such like the emergency preparedness plan and all of that. If they are non-existent, they should be part of the things, because you have gotten some findings from the field, and you should be able to, based on that, if the assignment includes that, to be able to prepare most of these things to be able to help the operation of the dam going forward. We should be able to attach appendices with maps, plans, monitoring data, and other auxiliary information that can help in the comprehension of the report that is presented. We should be able to maintain clear records to support future assessment. So when you do an inspection, what you have should be a stepping stone for further assessment and inspection. So you should be able to have clear records that others that will do further assessment will be able to make reference to in their future listings. So I'll just run through some of the case studies of some of the dams that we at MVPlan have inspected, and just show maybe the table of contents of some and a summary of some of the findings. So we've worked on Ele Dam in 2023, where we inspected the dam itself, the site spillway, we inspected the outlets within the scope, and then that also included a dam break studies. We also had to carry out a dam break studies, because when you're carrying out dam safety, involves both structural and hydraulic, hydrological, and all of that. You are checking for the structural integrity of the dam itself, but you are also interested in other components of dam safety, which are hydrological and hydraulic in nature. So the dam break analysis was just to simulate what happens if this dam fails. Who are the people that will be at risk, and what is the level of risk? It was part of what we did for the Ele Dam. So we also worked on Kiri Dam in 2023 as part of Trimming 2, and we did dam break studies too. We used UAV or manned area vehicles. We used drone to inspect. We carried out bathymetric survey of the dam as well, and then we inspected these parts of the dam to see their function. These are some of the pictures from Kiri Dam. This is the drawing, one of the drawings of the dam, of the Kiri Dam. And then Doma Dam in Nasarawa State, which was also assessed as part of Trimming 2. It was done in 2023. You can see some of the pictures. That's an instrumentation. You can see as if it's almost falling off and all of that. These are physical things that were observed, and pictures were taken for further studies and interpretation. You can see trees that are growing on the dam. And then we also did the dam break studies. We used UAV, because if you have been to Doma Dam, you will see that there is high vegetation and there are places that are not easily accessible, so we had to use fly drones there to be able to gather some information. Then we did some bathymetric survey, comprehensive bathymetric survey there to understand the bed condition of the reservoir. We inspected the dam, the spillway, the gates, the outlets. And then these are some of the issues that we identified with Doma Dam, for example. I'm just using them as case study. I just pick different things from different reports. So we saw that the downstream slope of the main and saddle dams is relatively steep. The slope was steeper than 1.21 to 2.5. There are signs of erosion. Erosion gullies were identified at some locations due to the lack of surface protection or inadequate surface protection with riprap, and then most probably extensive erosion exists on the downstream slope, but that side was covered with vegetation. So, even if you fly a drone there, it is the vegetation you see. You may not be able to see what is underneath the vegetation. But from what we saw in other places, we infer that there is possibility of erosion at the downstream side also. The downstream slope is heavily wooded with trees and bushes. The size of the trees, they are within the range of, they are greater than 12 inches in diameter, from a few inches and then to as large as 12 inches in diameter. The roots were visible above the ground surface, and they appear as large as 4 inches in diameter. Imagine that kind of tree on the slope of a dam. The bushes are approximately 2.5 feet high and covered about 50% of the slope. So this is the case of Doma Dam, for example. And then the downstream side of the dam also, we saw wet and soft areas at several locations along the embankment slope. And for us, there are possible pointers to maybe excessive seepage through the dam, because if water from the dam is forming pond-like bodies on the downstream, it only points to the possibility that water is seeping through the embankment excessively. All right, so these are some of the pictures. You can see that seemingly waterlogged area. That's the bushes there you saw. That's the main dam crest. All right, you can see water at the downstream side of the dam. You can see the high and thick vegetation. All of these are on Doma Dam. So, and we have all of these kind of reports and pictures for other dams. That's the spillway, the primary spillway of Doma Dam, which is a Morning Glory. And then for the spillway, the primary spillway was in use during the dam inspection, as the reservoir was at its maximum operating level at the time we got there. So the spillway was in use. You can see the water level there. It has, as the water is dropping through the Morning Glory spillway. The inlet structure of the spillway was observed to be intact and in good condition. The concrete sealing basin at the outlet is also good and in good condition. No defect was visually identified. The plunge pool connected to the sealing basin, we saw that it needed maintenance, as the protective riprap has been displaced by previous floods, probably due to insufficient size of rocks, and erosion was observed during the inspection. So these are just few observations from Doma Dam. Now, we did the Doma Dam and the Kiri Dam inspection almost at the same time, so we have a similar table of content for reporting what we found. So this is the table of content. For that, we have an introduction where we talk about the scope, the overview of the dam, the general geology and geotechnical assessment, geology and hydrogeological assessment, geotechnical assessment. We also did some seismic studies, also the overview of the seismic condition also. And then in recent time, I think from our work on Dadinkoa, because of some of the land tremors that are experienced in some states in the north, for a long time we don't think so much about seismicity because of how safe our area has been. But in recent time, we have experienced a number of tremors that are now making it very important to do some seismic evaluation of our dam structures as well. Then we have safety requirements of the dam in chapter 3. The dam safety guidelines is presented there. The scope of safety assessment of dam is also presented there. Then in chapter 4, we have safety issues related to reservoir hydrology and hydraulics design. All of those are there, and that is where we have the hydraulic characteristics, the updated flood hydrographs, the hydraulic risk assessment, the check on availability of freeboard, and then the dam break analysis itself. And then we have the inspection, what we got from the assessment, and they require remedial works and safety-related measures. Potential failure mode analysis was also carried out. Reservoir operation and maintenance rules were developed based on what we found. And then there was also an emergency preparedness plan and action plan, EPAP, that was also developed. And we have conclusions and recommendations that were also included. Appendix A looks at the operation and maintenance plan that was developed. Appendix B is the emergency preparedness plan, EPP. And then the Appendix C is the dam safety assessment. And we have another appendix that has the presenter before me talked about software like the HECRAS and all of that. Our outputs from running those models were also included as appendices to the report. So this is Dadinkoa. The story is similar to the ones I talked about. And Dadinkoa dam safety assessment was done under Trimming 1, and this is the table of content. It's very similar to what we have for the DOMA. I just brought them since they were done at different times. So this is what we have from Dadinkoa. You can see Appendix C is the HECRAS output from the flood and dam break assessment and the inundation mapping that was done. So for example, this is the Dadinkoa. We had about 27 conclusions that were made from that assessment. I just brought just a few, just to show us a sample of what we're talking about. We saw that the overall dam had been designed and constructed very well. It is in satisfactory condition for most parts. Vegetation downstream and upstream of the dam needs to be cleared. The recent flood hydrograph analysis has concluded that gated spillway is inadequate. That's the gated spillway we saw there, is inadequate considering the current practice of checking design flood with one gate not working. All right, so we checked with a situation, the scenario where one of the gates is not functioning, which is the current practice, because you have to simulate if one gate is not functional, will the spillway still be sufficient to remove excess flow when it happens. And when we did that, we noticed that the gated spillway was not sufficient. And then further looking at risk of gated spillway, especially in developing countries, a scenario of none of them may be working should be considered. In view of those risks, a mitigation measure of providing an ungated auxiliary spillway has been made. That's a recommendation that we made. That in addition to the gated spillway, we should have an ungated auxiliary spillway to be incorporated into the Dadinkoa. And then we have all of that here. Okay, they are giving me notes. The gates and valves at Dadinkoa are quite robust. Operational aspects of Dadinkoa Dam is unsatisfactory, and provisions of cranes, lubrication and maintenance of gate valves, replacement of damaged components is required. Provision of standby generators for spillway, mobile cranes for stop logs need to be in place. Spare wire ropes for gates need to be made available for maintenance purpose. For more than 96% of its life, the spillway gates had not been operated. And testing them at least once a year for full range of openings will be required. Operation and maintenance plan and EPP will be needed to prepared, will need to be prepared regularly. All right. The recent bathymetric survey undertaken in 2019 to 2020 had indicated that the sediment in the reservoir had not been significant. Changes in land use around the reservoir area has occurred in recent past, and more sediment is expected to be deposited within the reservoir in the future. As a result of that, we recommended in 2019-2020 that another bathymetric survey should be undertaken in 5 years. Now this is 5 to 6 years, and I'm not sure if that has or is being planned to be done. The condition of the dam instrumentation, especially readings, have deteriorated since the last inspection in 2014. At the time of the current inspection of the dam instrumentation is unsatisfactory and will need to be brought to operating condition. And new ones such as manual and automated reservoir gauge, seepage measurement V-notch wear have to be provided. In order to maintain the existing instrument and get a new readout unit, the original supplier need to be contacted. Thank you. I can go right.
Let's jam our hands again for our presenter. want to recognize our participants online. They can also join. They can keep their question intact during the panel discussion too. Please, we still appreciate you people, those online. It is time we now move straight to the panel discussion because of time. And to do this segment for the panel discussions, I want to call on our director, Engineer Adala, to please come to the high table for the panel discussion. Please come around. I want to also call on Engineer DM Lawa to please come up to the high table. Engineer Musa, please, you come up to the high table. Engineer Ofie, please, can you come up to the high table? Engineer Desi Alabi, please, can you come up to the high table, please? Our moderator for this panel discussion is Engineer Musa. Engineer Zacchaeus, please, can you join us to the high table?
Good afternoon, everybody. We are all welcome to this panel discussion session. I must confess that since yesterday, we've had robust discussions. Even though I'm aware that we're a little bit under, tight schedule. Okay.
Sorry, our director too. Madam, please, can you join us at the high table, please?
Okay, thank you, Director, and all my big guys, Engineer Ofie, that are here. I will just be actually coordinating this panel section discussion. But before then, I will just quickly give quick overview of presentation that has been done. And then maybe I will start with my own quick observations. Since we are discussing about safety management of dam, I'm glad that Engineer Ofie, in his presentation, he talks about possibility of problems with spillway, inadequate spillway. And he mentioned one key thing that could even be used possibly to to correct or to control that is if you have a good reservoir operation in place. We must know that so that we'll let public know that dams are actually blessing. They are not cause of problem. He has also demonstrated that through this flood routing. Once you have a dam, it can attenuate the flow that will rather go downstream. But the danger there is where reservoir that has been designed, maybe for irrigation, water supply, or whatever, to run so that during the period of dry season, you are supposed to have drawn it down and create volume in case, when the flood are coming, you have enough volume to take. If it is not being used, that could even serve as a potential danger. So this now really, since we are discussing with dam owners there, dam regulator, it is important to stop forthwith. If we are not going to use dam, not to build it. It is important that dams are really put to the purpose, to the intended purpose for which they are designed. If it is water supply, ensure it's supplying the water. If it is irrigation, ensure you are using it for irrigation, such that when there's a raining and flood season, volume are already created to actually accommodate some of this flow that will have gone downstream. That is one. Then the other thing I want to talk about is I'm happy I'm surrounded by our presenter yesterday called the Dams Department at EFCC of Dam. So they are here. I think it's also important, we know that Nigeria is divided into 8 hydrological zones. And I'm aware that I think ACRISA, they are talking about strategic catchment management plan for 20 within the northern states. It will be advisable that we know that every is located within a catchment. So if the operator can already know that, okay, within this catchment, this is the available volume of water, how do we equitably use it? How would that one dam be affecting the downstream or whatever? I think it is very important going forward so that we identify all dams, all potential of every catchment or sub-catchment, so that from onset, we're able to control whatever dam is coming. Thank you very much. I will quickly start with a recap of our first paper presented, talking about dam safety management. I will just identify key aspects of dam safety. Part of it is risk assessment of all these dams. We have to identify the dams that are potentially under threat. Then it talks about operation and maintenance. It talks about, in fact, dam safety management starts from the design and construction of the dam. That even leads me to another issue that I wanted to raise. Since we know that dam design and construction are really the basis of any dam safety management, I was sharing with him and a few others how easy it is to get documentation on constructed dams. I think he said it was very, very difficult. Maybe as part of this panel discussion, I want us also to discuss how could documentation for dams outlive us even when we are not here. Is it a library system? Is it an archive system that will make sure that even when we are not there, every documentation on every dam are available? Before I'll go, it's part of the discussion we'll be making, but I'll just quickly conclude it. Then it talks about emergency preparedness, lack of emergency, those are threat to safety, lack of surveillance of monitoring, lack of routine inspection, lack of modification, and then lack of maybe sometimes engaging the community. And those people, he has some recommendation. I will not go on that. Then the second paper talked about the code of practice. Actually, the presentation was very robust. But if we that are seated here do not know about such provision, how much more are people that are outside? So it is, in fact, even the dam inspection we are talking about is an 100-page document. It has, according to the presentation which we are yet to have, had all the forms of inspection. You also have guidelines for people that want to build dam, how they need to obtain permits and licenses and all these things. These are very important. I think part of this discussion will be, how do we really ensure that this documentation is actually available to all stakeholders? Number one, stakeholders. Number two, how do we get the backing, the enforcement needed to make sure that this thing could be brought, could be back so that whoever defaults, law will really catch up with him. For instance, if you must obtain a license before you build dam, it must be done. The idea, that's why I started with catchment. Somebody that sits maybe, the federal knows what are the dam, how many dam can a catchment take? You have the flow. The catchment cannot really yield more than it's available. So somebody that is that is in the apex, you must ask if the number of dam needed or the capacity of dam needed within the catchment, it will be a waste investment doing that. So going forward, I think it is important to know these are we have experienced people here. We have to rub minds on how do we ensure that this code of practice for dam and reservoir operation and maintenance really obtain the necessary backings of the government. And I can also see, even from that presentation, there are ways that could even free the dam department from problems of finances on this. If there are charges that are, for instance, if I want to register a vehicle, I know I have to pay for my license, I have to pay for this. And people are already used to it. If people are used to this too, and they are making payment available, then running and effecting this thing will be easy. So finally, we talk about our Oga hydrologist here has really guided us, very, very important. If we get it wrong from the hydraulic point of view, the dam will not stay. We have been talked on how we can estimate our flow and how we can have safety on our dams. So I will just now, thank God we have the presenters here. I just have about 5-6 points of discussion. Number one is need for regulation and update of our dam register. I can see people battling to know how many numbers of dam we have. There are some information saying 400, 450, but one thing this house should really be clear is that there is a compendium of dam. Whatever compendium of dam has, that is it. But now we cannot go forward. How do we ensure that we have regular updates? So I will start with my director. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Engineer Musa, other members of the panel, starting from my very big Oga, whom I have privilege of working under, and I learn a lot from, Engineer Ofe, whom I still remain hugely indebted to because of what I gained from him. Actually, let me start with the compendium of dams. We have it both in hard and soft copies, and that we have a website for it. Whoever that want to access it can easily go to our website and we get the information he needs or she needs. And that is part of our plan to update it on maybe 5-yearly intervals. I just, when you just put your hand on a button, you will see the number of dams available, which amount to 408 dams at the moment. And this is the number we can always quote authoritatively because we have information and it was authority, that allowed or approved the number. So authoritatively you can say, yes, Nigeria has 408 dams of all categories, from large to medium to small. Yes, and even various numbers are specified there. For the sizes are also specified. So you can, consult the compendium of them and get whatever you want. Some of our documents in the department, we're also going to digitalize them. And whichever item that is digitalized will remain, can I say forever? But it will remain for a very long time. It will not be easily missed off. During the presentation, especially on flooding, on dams failure and flooding delivered by our own engineer, senior colleague, Engineer Faye. I accept all that he mentioned because I don't think I can cherry pick some of them. But permit me to more or less give an example of hydrologic and hydraulic failure that he mentioned concerning Alau Dam. There has been a lot of talks on what must have necessitated the failure of Alau Dam. I think I can give you maybe a short brief for you to understand the scenario. Alau Dam, what actually caused the failure is climate change. Because the kind of arrangement that was there before the failure had been there for a number of years. We know that there are inadequacies. Looking at the gates, for instance, that was not properly functional. And then there is another spillway, emergency spillway, that has not been fully utilized. So these two have been there for some years, but we did not experience failure of that dam. So our belief is that the annual rainfall, the rainfall that occurred, which came from the upstream, from Adamawa area, constantly, in fact, there was no August break, and in fact, it was unprecedented because similar rain of that magnitude has never occurred in that region. Happened. And when the rain came, or the flood water came, normally it was intercepted by one river they call Baraka Dam. That Baraka Dam, could not hold the storage that went beyond its capacity. As a result, a dike, which we named Dike 3, that is supposed to prevent water from Baraka Dam River into Alau Dam Reservoir, failed. So when it failed, the huge volume of water from Baraka Dam found its way to Alau Dam Reservoir. And with so much already in there that came from Gada River, the storage was built up to the point where another dike, which we call Dike 1, was overtopped because the design storage capacity was exceeded. And any earth material that was overtopped, it easily gets washed off. That's exactly what was responsible for the collapse of Alau Dam. My Oga also in his paper mentioned, because it has been an impression, in this country that dams leads to flooding. And we have seen where dams play a spectacular role in arresting flood water. For instance, in Kashimbila Dam, the concept was originally to intercept flood water from Lake Nyos in Cameroon in case of collapse, because it was predicted that that lake will give way in years to come. And once that happened, 50 million cubic meters of water from that lake will find its way into Nigeria, and it will go as far as Niger Delta. So all these riparian states, on River Niger, that is starting from River Benue, before it will all be flooded up to the Niger Delta. So it is on this basis that we built Kashimbila. And if by now the Lake Nyos collapses, the huge volume will be trapped by the Kashimbila. The way it's going to work is that even if Kashimbila Reservoir is at full storage capacity, when the water comes from Lake Nyos, it will spray, on the whole of the reservoir. That is approximately 500 million cubic meters. So for it, this one will, will reduce the impact of flow water downstream. So in a way, you can see that flooding downstream is prevented or will drastically reduce as a result of the presence of a dam called Kashimbila on that location. And I think, I don't know whether we will have to have time for us to discuss so that I don't enter into somebody else's time. But on inspection of dams, for instance, these things we are talking about are the components of flood control management. Dam safety management. The inspection of dam. In our own case, based on the oversight that we have as a department, we use the little resource we are given yearly to undertake inspection of some selective few dams, and the whole idea is to ensure that their health is established, because everybody knows the devastation that normally comes with dam failure. So, and the first stage in ensuring that dam does not fail is after you have done your design, the construction, when it is operation, you look at the, the components of the dam, the features, whether they are in good condition or they are in bad condition, and you provide remedies for them so that implementation will be carried out immediately in order for us to arrest failure of a dam. So we in the Department of Dams, we have been doing that, but we only recommend when we observed, some inadequacies, especially for dams that are not under our control, our ownership. We only give recommendations. And the recent one that was carried out nationally is the Technical Subcommittee on Dams that was approved by the FEC, Federal Executive Council, under the chairmanship of Mr. President. So that one, we went around the country looking at the various conditions of our dams for us to establish their healthy status for redress where necessary in good time. So I think, Mr. Coordinator, let me stop here and allow others also make their contribution. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, my director. I think before I go to the other question I have, there's a popular saying in Hausa that somebody behind the scene sees where to hit better. I've raised the issue of problems of documentation of our dam and design. I will pose this question to Engineer Ofe and possibly my Oga Engineer Lawa. What method can we ensure that upon completion of every dam, the document will be available come after maybe 50, 40 years? What method can we adopt so that, because we have that problem, you hardly lay hands on documents. Please give us a guideline, sir.
Well, it's a very difficult question to ask, but I must say that while I was in service, we always had provision for as-built drawings and design for our dams. And one thing that became difficult over the years was that the Federal Ministry of Water Resources lost their library. When I came to Water Resources in 1983, I started my career from the library the ministry library at Kufo Aboyomi in Victoria Island then. The director at that time, Dr. Bankole Martins, will always ask you to go and start reading the documents we had in the library. But when we moved to Abuja in 1988, we didn't move with the library. We moved with the books, but we didn't create space for the library. I think the starting point should be to create library in the Ministry of Water Resources so that all the documentations will always be kept in the library. I worked recently for irrigation departments. I did a design for them, and I had a meeting with them this year, or late last year, because the design was going to be included in this pane. So they needed me to come and do some clarifications. And when I got there, to my greatest surprise, they didn't even have a copy of the design that I did for them. And they were requesting me to give them another copy. I was taken aback. So, but if you have a library, if you finish, it will be mandatory. All the reports, even in the agreements, you make provision to keep a copy in the library. In that way, you have a copy in the library, and then as built drawings and designs, you also have a copy in the library. That is one possible way of doing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Engineer Musa. Good morning, everybody. My honor take is the major problem we have in this country, we plan and design dams without planning for their operation and maintenance. Right from the planning stage, we should also be able to plan of how we intend to operate and maintain these dams. It's not that after completion, then you now look at who is responsible. Maybe the ministry has designed and built a dam, and then now they say they will just hand it over to a river basin to operate and maintain. They will tell you they are not even carried out. So how can they maintain of what they don't know how it was built? From there, problems started. And another problem is that we use consultants, and most of these consultants are foreigners. They will carry all the important information and carry it to their country. They will just leave us with bundles of papers, which will now fill our offices. And now when you want to leave that office, somebody is coming to operate that office. At the end of the day, you see all these documents are going and packed in one container. At the end of the day, the container was thrown as dustbin. And you lose that document. 10 years, 20 years, an administration will come and now they say now they wanted to investigate something, they wanted to do something, and now you start looking for documents for what has been done 20 years ago, 10 years back. How can you get it? It's not possible because it has already been lost. And now if you go to those people that have done that design and drawings and do the supervision, they have it while taken in their countries. You ask them to give you an e-copy, they will give you in PDF, they will not give you in the copy that you can even maintain as something that you can even be adjusted. Even if you want to use it for reference, they cannot modify it. They take ownership at the end of the day of it, while you have actually paid for it as a client. So the moment we have to change this one, if we didn't change this our own practice, we are still going back to square one. And to change this practice, we need regulations. We need policies. Fortunately, we have policy on the Ministry of Water Resources General. I have seen a policy on water supply. I have seen a policy on irrigation, but I have never seen a policy on dam. So maybe Department of Dams, it is high time now you start working on policy on dams. Because it now this policy that will even lead to this, what we call it a code of practice to be established using the Water Resources Council and now compel other stakeholders to adhere to it. Because if you look at it now, there is one agency under Ministry of Environment right to hijack the activities of what is supposed to be under Department of Dams of the Ministry of Water Resources. They are now even trying to tell us that they are the one responsible for monitoring and giving the code of practice for construction of dams. For anybody that wanted to construct a dam, even the ministry itself, that they have to adhere to what they have prepared there, which is not to be, is supposed to be other way around. So maybe I will just stop here.
Thank you.
I have said my own.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you so much. I think going forward, we are discussing this so that necessary action be taken. The next question, I think Engineer Zach and Madam Stella should prepare for it, because across the presentation, we have been seeing lack of standardized regulatory compliance was identified as key aspect of dam safety management. Now, how can there be this strict adherence to relevant regulatory compliance? Though my Oga has raised something, policy, I don't know. But the important thing is, how do we? Now we have a code of practice that covers all across for the, dam and reservoir operation. How can we make it effective? So I think coming from PPP side, Engineer Zacchaeus, can there be a guidance what we need to do going forward? Then we'll be supported by Madam Stella. Thank you.
Thank you for this question. We're talking about regulatory, right? Well, if you look at it from the angle of the private sector, whatever they call policy is policy. What we have to do, you have to do. You know, if we look, for example, look at the way we produce, sell, distribute electricity before I come to the issue of water and dams. You see, if you have a power plant, for example, or even before you build a power plant as a private sector or even as a government, there are certain documents you have to secure. There are agencies you have to go to. For example, now electricity is basically regulated by NAC, Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission. If you build a power plant and you don't have a generation license and all of that, you can't even produce 1 kilowatt. Who brings you into grid? National control centers and all that. TCN is there, grid connection and the rest of them. We can duplicate same in the water sector. It's just, you go to farms, even along this KV Abuja Road, there are quite a number of dams I've seen there privately owned. All this we are talking about dam safety, how do we draw down, how do we do this and all that. How do we make sure we supply minimum amount of water to downstream users? Doesn't really bother them because that regulation is not there. NIWRM is, I think, established to do certain things like that, because if you must drill a borehole, you must construct a dam, we must have an agency of government that says, without this, you cannot do this, until we think in that direction. Because when you look at it, just like from the studies we had yesterday and even today from Engineer Office lecture, we have seen it that quite a number of dams does not belong to federal government. And if we look at how we are seated here, I doubt whether we have anybody from the state. I doubt whether we have up to 1% of the private sector here. So what are we saying? How does this information get to them? So we need to enforce and get an agency like that, NIWRM, the Department of Dams that we all belong also can complement and order and make it a law that if you don't do this, we will not allow you to practice this and all of that. So until we do that, we will continue to gather together, talk theoretically, and in practice, get nowhere. It's important. When you look at, we're talking about safety, the man there that only want to feed maybe his farm or cattle and all of that does not even believe that people downstream also need to exist or they need to survive and things like that. It's only at the government level that we talk to ourselves. We need to do more advocacy. Perhaps maybe in the next council we want to do and all that, we can bring these as either information memo or what do you call it, or action memo, because we have quite a number of these commissioners of water resources, energy, or whatever nomenclature they call it, from all over the states. They gather together, we discuss and order. So I think it's time now. We need to maybe how do I translate PowerPoint as is used in power to power plant. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before I hand over to engineer director 2, we also appreciate participants online. If you have any quick question you want to, or contribution you have, you can send to the line, or you indicate. We just have about 15-20 minutes more. But meanwhile, I will now hand over to engineer.
Yes, Engineer Lawa raised a very important point, and that is the fact that while we have a national policy on water resources and strategy, a national policy on irrigation and drainage and strategy, we don't have a national policy on dams and reservoirs. And I believe that that should be the foundation. We must have a national policy on dams and reservoir operation before we can really think about policy on dam safety. But the good news is that the ministry, of course, in collaboration with all the other stakeholders, is in the process of having that document produced. Now, you will agree with me that in the course of this workshop, apart from the code of practice for dam reservoirs in Nigeria, Engineer Ofio brought up the guidelines that was produced for Kainji, Jeba, and it's possible some have been produced for some other dams. And now, under the SPIN project, we have provision for the production of a national guidelines for dam safety in Nigeria. And so what we are going to do is to review all of the existing documents, the code of practice, the guidelines that have been produced for some dams, in collaboration with all the relevant stakeholders, from the national to the state, including the private sector operators, and come up with a policy, a guideline that can be enforced. You see, it's very easy to produce documents at the national level, but we need to secure the ownership and the support of operators at all levels, public and private. Is very important. And you know, one of the things that caught my attention when the presenter yesterday made his presentation with regards to dam safety, the issue of community participation in dam safety came up. These are things we despise. We don't give sufficient attention to sensitizing all the other stakeholders. You see, the issue of construction, operation of dams must involve the collaboration of all stakeholders. If in Nigeria we want to effectively use dams for the sustainable socioeconomic development of Nigeria, it's not enough for us to build dams and just leave. The kind of funds that goes into the funding of dams should be able to make significant impact. We read, we watch videos of the wonders that are being done in China. How the Three Gorges Dam, all of those dams have transformed China. We need to be challenged. How far have the dams we have constructed in Nigeria transformed Nigeria? must begin to sensitize, do the necessary collaboration, not just for dam safety. The policies that we are going to develop, the national policy on dams and reservoir, the guidelines must secure the ownership and the support. Because if people don't buy into what you are doing, they are not going to operate it. How many dams does the federal government operate? If we don't get the private sector operators, if we don't get the states and the other private owners to buy, in fact, to key into, right from the stage of production of these policies, to the stage of implementing the policies, we can't achieve anything. Let me stop here. Thank you very much.
I mean, provoke very important discussion, which I think is taking note, and there should be follow-up on it. I will ask these questions, but meanwhile, I will quickly move to the online participant. This question will be for our Director, Dams, and Engineer Alabi. How do we develop acceptable standardized program for routine dam inspection, proper documentation, analysis, and proactive action? I will just combine it with the two, as well as operation and maintenance. How do we, acceptable program for every dam, irrespective of dam? Maybe this particular class of dams, these are what you must follow in terms of inspection, routine inspection. This and this must be made. In terms of operation and maintenance, this and this must be met. I appreciate the constraints, because our director said they actually, because of finance, select few dams to, but it could be those dams that are not inspected that will cause problems. So let you find out how do we, so that this program is there. If I want to build a house in Abuja, I cannot just get land. I will have to submit my drawing to a particular group that will vet and approve it. Let's create something like that for dam. That should not just be a fund somewhere, I just want to build. There should be a regulation, and there should be, we have to give standard procedure. So before I come back to the online, to the on-site here, I will quickly give chance to, we have about 6, but I will just randomly select 3 people. Engineer Ade, then Engineer Ayobami, and then maybe Tajuddin Bukoyi. Please, quickly, 1 minute, your question. Over to you, your question or contribution. Thank you.
Engineer Ade, please. Are you there?
Okay, the next person is not there. Yes, Ayobami sir. Ayobami sir. We are running out of time.
Can you hear us? Can you hear us? Please, you can go on. Unmute yourself and start. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm Engineer Urban Department, the Deputy General Manager of Operation and Maintenance, State Water Corporation. I want to appreciate the ministry for this privilege. It has been very helpful to us, and we appreciate it. I have a question about a little contribution first. Please engage us the more, just like the last 2 speakers have just said. We would like to be carried along. We have dams owned by state government, that are needed to be maintained very well. If we are not open to all these guidelines to be followed, routine to follow, we will be left behind. And when disaster comes, it will not be for the state government alone. The national government, we have to come in to mitigate. We can prevent it together. Thank you, that's my contribution. Now, my question is, for the inspection, how will the federal agency involve, harmonize to carry out this inspection? One of the presenters said the inspection fee must be multidisciplinary. But these days, because of the condition of flooding that we experience, we are seeing other agencies outside of the water resources agency, for example, next year, coming on to demand environmental audit report, coming on to request inspection. You also saw NIWA coming on to demand water use rights. So I want to ask, what's the role of all these agencies, especially NIWA, National Inland Waterways, and next year? What is their role? How far will they need to go on dam operation and management inspection? Thank you very much. That's my question.
Thank you very much. Please, those online, we just want 1 minute questions. Just 1 minute questions because of time constraint.
The next person, please, 1 minute. I have the mandate of the director. By 1:30, we should be through here. Please, quick. If they are not there, we come back here. Do we have Bukoye, Tajuddin Bukoye online, or Engineer Ade?
Yes, please. Can you hear me?
Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes. I really want to commend this workshop. Is quite apt and right on time. My appreciation to the Director Dams, Director 2, Madam Stella, Director Zacchaeus, Minister of Power, and all the presenters for their valuable presentations. And they're quite technical, and we can all see that this has actually addressed all the gaps and issues confronting the dams and water resources sector in the country. And my question is, what is the way forward? We have also, from our presenters, who have observed that there are numerous available studies and reports in our archives, either from the Department of Dams, river basins authorities, consultants, contractors, and what have you. But the issue we have is the ability to access them and then look into them and get valuable information that will be useful for the sector. Again, we heard of the availability of the code of practice, but not design codes for the country. Dam safety guidelines are not present, the policies and regulations for the country, just as enumerated by Director Stella. And particularly, there is no one-stop shop where you can say, you want to come to the country, to say, want to design a dam, what are the requirements? Who checks your hydrology? Who checks your geotechnics? Who checks your other parameters? There's no one-stop shop, so there's a need for that. But here, this just, helps us to trigger the fact that there's need for to harmonize design approaches, regulations for the sector as a whole, while taking into cognizance all the agencies. And the good news here is that at least now we have an opportunity, a window of opportunity, through the World Bank funded project, which is called SPIN, to see how the new guideline will be developed and utilized. And those of us who are partaking in the ongoing dam safety portfolio risk assessment attest to the fact that we have a huge gap in terms of information and data availability in the country. Finally, in recent times, I think it has been observed that there's a huge capacity gap among even practitioners in the dams and water resources sector in the country. And my recommendation is we should not shy away from updating ourselves, just as spelled out by Engineer Ofie. We keep updating ourselves day by day, and there is no one person who knows it all in dams engineering. It's all encompassing: hydrology, hydraulics, water, and so on and so forth. So this is my little contribution to this workshop, and I really want to commend the organizers for this kind of engagement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Engineer Bukoye. I think it's noted. Let me give the audience 3 people here before I come back to director. 3 people. I learned there are some people that
Good afternoon.
You have 2 minutes, sir.
Now, my question is, the first is a suggestion. We want to appreciate the director. The director have been encouraging technical sessions, even when the designer, when consultant come to submit and study and design. And also there are some technical sessions for some staff. But with what we have on this ITV that can give us further knowledge, like what we have said about hydrology. I've been following you right when it was in H&H. I want to agree with the director. Please, let's have a technical session in the department. You know everybody that will be interested. So if we this year, but let's just have a technical session to offer our more knowledge, like Okoye said. Then the second one is my challenge is, I've been reviewing some studying and design. I discovered that they are not concerned about data security. No 20 years record, no 30 years record. All is about just using software. And, I look at a dam called Dura Dam. It's not that study. We have 2 major rivers that are contributing to leaf flow that have been proposed reservoir. We have the Dura Dam, we have the Katsina Dam coming from Cameroon. And the guy is just using software. No data to check, no data to, So I think we need this code of conduct. We need to have something on it. You cannot just come and dump something for us in the department and go and collect money. So I will say then on the issue of inspection, I will try to, I wanted to ask, okay, it's not on the inspection, the anthropogenic activity is too much. The activities of the community, like Madam Stella said, we need to have community relationship. They put a lot of things on the dam, like sedimentation, they do farming, they do some mining, a lot of activities. So I'll just stop here because of time. Thank you so much.
What was good of that? The Harvard office, also the Harvard journalist, from Ministry of Water Resources. My question goes directly to the presenters. My question is over there now, we know that flooding in Nigeria decreased after 10 years. But because of climate change, it's happening every 2 years, if not less. But what I'm saying, can we continue to be using our people? Those are the downstream. I'm trying to see if it is possible for the experts to suggest for federal government to construct barrages along the 2 major waterways in Nigeria, so that there will be depth to contain this water that is coming from micro dams and river lakes, so that there will be reduction in loss of life. So this is what I want to ask: if there will be possibility of creating barrages along the Nigeria.
Okay, thank you, Engineer Ofie is taking note of that. Then the third person.
Emphasis has not been laid on how this
minutes to the time we have, then I will have to give director should speak last. You should round it up. Daisy, answer the question, then you will respond to that.
Thank you very much. Very quickly, two
have 3
issues.
minutes.
Yes, 2 issues here. One of the major challenge we have with the dams, as Dr. Ofe has pointed out, is that we built these dams all across the country and they are not doing what they were designed to do. If you visit most of our dams, I've been hearing of Lake Inyos when I was a student as a pupil engineer. And I was surprised when I visited Kashimbila. I was so happy that finally we have a dam that can protect us if that lake eventually gives way. But when I visited Kashimbila, thank God, I don't know now if they have started generating power, the dam was full, the reservoir was spilling. And I'm like, this is supposed to be primarily for flood control, and it's full. So if this lake should break now, this dam has not helped us in any major way, because it's supposed to be regulating the flow on that river. And you have the same Owena Dam. We have visited Doma Dam like 5 times. I'm sure if you get to Doma Dam now, it's likely to be spilling. So all these dams are there all year round, sitting down, doing nothing. So instead of controlling the flow in the river, they end up becoming problematic because they are not being regulated. So I think the first challenge is, if we are building dams, we should be able to proceed further to engaging those dams to do what they're supposed to do. Number 2, the issue of whether we can, and that's, I'm leaning towards what Director Awad said. Please, I think we should begin to look forward that when we do design and concept design for dam, it shouldn't end at design and construction. It should engage and involve going forward another 5 years, another 10 years in the life of that dam, so that we know from day one, it's not just the cost of constructing this dam that we're looking for. We have in place what is going to take to maintain this dam for another 5 or 10 years, so that we are not coming back exactly a year after, 2 years after, and the dam is in shambles. And lastly, about generating revenue from our dams. Of course, we identified ways yesterday about permits, about license, about inspection and all that. But the question I was asking secretly here is, with our present TSA system, will the money or the funds still come back to these dams? Because once it enters the big pores, how easy is it going to be to get them out from these big pores to attend to these individual dams that generate the fund? This my own observation.
Thank you very much, Engineer Dicey. I think I will just quickly respond to the case of Kashimbila. It was designed, is an unusual dam. It was designed with freeboard of 8 meters. So what Kashimbila does is, even when it's spilling, it only allows flow to go through the spillway, meaning that the flow that the river downstream can carry. But notwithstanding, the fear I even had was, when we were on the site constructing, that supposing that Lake Hills now break at that time. But since we have escaped, I didn't break, and the dam in this place, I think we are all safe. So the dam is serving its purpose. But I also agree with you, irrigation is being planned around this, and the water supply too. Once it's been put into use, the water will be used for that. And well, on TCA, maybe PPA and PPP is here. It will be to a kind of concession. That's the only way. Otherwise, like he rightly said, if the government has to do that, you have to pay in the common purse. Now, let me allow Engineer Ofe 3 minutes. Each and each man ask a question.
I was about to doze off when I heard him talking. So he said that flood occurs every 10 years. That woke me up. As a matter of fact, it's not correct. Flood doesn't occur every 10 years. It's just a coincidence that we had flooding in 2012 and another one in 2022. Well, flooding regime has changed generally because of climatic change. What does that mean? It means that you'll be having extreme events more often. You have extreme events will be flooding or drought. That is the meaning of climate change, in summary. So it has altered the statistics we had before. If we had statistics, take for instance, you design your spillways that you have maybe 1 in 10,000 year flood as most likely flood that will occur very rarely. There's a high likelihood that it has changed because of climatic change. That is the meaning, in simple terms. So flooding does not occur every 10 years. It is a random variable. It occurs. It can have what we had in 2012. It can have it consecutively for 5 years. It has not changed anything. That's the meaning of stochastic, variables, or random variables. That is one. Then the second question is that the recommendations from the flood committee was very clear, and I think the council even approved the Department of Dams request to do detention dams and ponds on the floodplains. So I think they're just waiting for money to be able to do that. Okay. So I think that was the second question he was asking about, to be able to detain these floods. It's possible. We had a robust, remember when we were doing the flood committee, we had a robust discussion on that, on this issue of detention base, because we can use the extensive floodplains in Benue Valley to retain these floods and then release them much later. It could be part of the plans. I don't know whether it's part of the plans you have, but some of them can go. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. We now hand over to the director.
Thank you very much, the various speakers. Actually, the last thing you just mentioned is work in progress. We have started communicating to the governors. In fact, the entire 36 plus the Minister of State, 36 governors plus Minister of State have been intimated on that. We need their input. So it's work in progress. And this maintenance that keep coming up, in fact, Council has approved that 5% of money accrued from ecological fund be set aside for dams maintenance. So it's in the council. Yes, so it's there. We are yet to achieve, our feet on that, but it's work in progress as well. And I think one question that you asked concerning inspections of our dams, that needs to be standardized. I think inspection is not country specific. It's not country specific. So we can leverage on the achievement made in some advanced countries for our own country, in our own country. So far, we normally classify in terms of hazard potentials of a dam, condition of dams, its own reservoir operation, if there is any change in reservoir operations or spillway, change in spillway sizing, or even occurrence of flooding. Dams that are prone to floodings, areas that are prone to floodings where dams are situated. We look at that, and as soon as such event occurs, we inspect. We go for inspection of each of these dams. So in fact, it's ongoing, and I think we're not relenting in that. Which other thing that I think I need to say something about? Okay, the need to actually carry our guidelines, for legislation. I think we'll start with the protection zone. Yes, protection zone, and even this 5% approved limit by council. We'll work it out. We'll go through the Federal Executive Council, and from there, I think it will be passed to National Assembly as a legislative, what do you call it? Bill, as a legislative bill for approval. So once that is given to us, it becomes binding on every other thing. Then we can now use our stick to deal with any person that infringe upon the act. But the way it is now, there's no point we can do. Yes. So, dam generating. Okay, the already dams, I think, is generating some revenue through our concession. So we concession some of our dams, like the Gurara Dam concession to Northside Power, Kashimbila Dam concession to KPI. So all these things, they remit, they make remittances to the government. So I think damming on its own is not just useless like that. It's making contribution to our national economy, in fact. So that is just for that. And I want to urge my own staff that all that we have learned here should not be wished away. We should do good to implement it when we go back to our classes. In fact, it will help us to office. It will help us on our service delivery for the production of, our country. So please, whatever we learn here, let us not just take it for granted. It's going to be useful. Let us use it, let us use it for improvement of our service delivery. I think on this note, I will create your indulgence to say thank you. I don't need to go further than this, but to say thank you for your time, and we look forward to see more of this robust workshop in Guta. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Director. I think I will use the opportunity to say what I spoke to Engineer Ofi, based on what Bukoye said, capacity gap. As he was going, I challenge you, ensure you reproduce yourself in one of your staff before you go. The same thing I'm saying to Engineer Dalla, Madam Stella, ensure that you reproduce yourself in the system before you go. The Lord will help us. Thank you.
It's a round of applause for the panelists. As a few reminders, we will be getting the materials via our emails. So if you put down your emails, rest assured you'll get the materials. Announcement number 2, for those that will be going for the field trip, the partial time is 7:30 a.m. at the ministry, at the main gates of the ministry. Departure time is 7:30 a.m. On this note, we'll